So Trump capitulates and then gets to say that he's the winner. That's how he likes to frame the headlines there. A deal has been made with Canada. But in actuality, the $1.3 billion being spent on the border was already going to be spent. That was in December already. The government here decided to put up $1.3 billion down on border security. So we're going to throw $200 million extra on top of that, I guess, for more measures. Whatever. These are things that, Canada's always been willing to do, whether I like it or not. These are the kinds of negotiations and arrangements that have always happened between Canada and the United States. Nothing unusual. Why do you need to spark a trade war to get these things, So they're testing our sovereignty. They're testing our resolve. And we are showing firm and strong right now that we are not willing to be pushed around. This is the Bad News Show. Let's look what CBC's saying today and other things like that. Let's look at what I think is a bit of a coup happening in America, experts say, and other bad news like that. No weather news for you tonight. This is just me in the depths of the winter, sitting up here in my mountain home, sitting by the wood stove, trying to keep warm, trying to keep sane, talking to the world, getting things off my chest, and using my YouTube channel to express what I think is right, real, and just. Let's go. There it is. This is bad news. My God. Falling out right now. Anything could happen. Get on! Wow. I'll watch the video later. Ain't dry mopping this. I'm going to play for you, first of all, the CBC News breaking announcement. A deal's been made, whatever. We're going to play for that and just have a little bit of a reaction to what they're saying, just to sort of set up where we're going with the show here. Let's go.
Here is that Canada has also secured a pause on the tariffs for 30 days. And this is in a post on X by the Prime Minister. If I could just have the liberty to read it to everyone.
Absolutely.
So that they can see the background. He says, I just had a good call with President Trump. Canada is implementing our $1.3 billion border plan, reinforcing the border with new choppers, technology and personnel, enhanced coordination with our American partners, and increased resources to stop the flow of fentanyl.
So things that we were already doing.
Nearly 10,000 frontline personnel are and will be working on protecting the border. Now, here's where
do
the
what we
new
were
stuff
already
comes
doing.
in. Oh, there, you've got it up. Great. In addition, Canada is making new commitments to appoint a fentanyl czar. We will list cartels as terrorists, ensure 24/7 eyes on the border, launch a Canada-U.S. joint strike force to combat organized crime, fentanyl, and money laundering. I've also signed a new intelligence directive on organized crime and fentanyl, and we will be backing it with $200 million. Proposed tariffs will be paused for at least 30 days while we work together. So that is the news. Obviously, this is just breaking. This is just coming in. But the call at 3 p.m. between the president and the prime minister has clearly resulted in a deal, much like the one we have been reporting on with Mexico, to hold off on the tariffs for 30 days, I guess, to see how this actually gets executed and whether it's enough to satisfy Donald Trump to permanently decide not to hold tariffs, what would be very punishing and damaging tariffs to our economy, but also the U.S. economy beyond those 30 days. So that is just coming in right now.
I really don't understand the danger
there will
our
be a
country
meeting,
is
as
in.
we know, we've been reporting between the Canada-U.S. Cabinet Committee of the government, who will obviously be talking about this, and perhaps we will get further information, especially about these new measures being announced by the Prime Minister, about how they will work.
Karina, this is just an unbelievable day, right? You have the 9 o'clock call. Let's just kind of go back. Let's talk about the day. The 9 o'clock call with the Prime Minister as well, the U.S. President talking with the Mexican president, announcing that the Mexican president there would be this 1 month reprieve, and then a 3 o'clock call. And it's sort of the day just wasn't sure. We got some alerts about how the U.S. Border Patrol was getting ready to go through the list, and then all of a sudden, bam.
Absolutely.
All of a sudden, bam,
this
Trump
does seem to be sort of the new reality, the new normal with the Trump administration, that there is a lot of unpredictability, both in terms of what will be said and what will be done and what will come of it. So it's interesting, too, that the money attached to this, $200 million to these new measures, or the the intelligence directive on organized crime and fentanyl, and backing that with $200 million.
$200 million.
I think just from a financial point of view, yeah, that's probably a lot cheaper than the damage to the economy. Well, it is a lot cheaper than the damage to the economy that Canada would have suffered through tariffs. But it still is a wad of cash for measures. And what does 24/7 eyes on the border mean? Is that drones? Is that people? And it's a very long border. So
almost 9,000 kilometers long.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. But it is interesting hearing about this. It does seem that there is a real concerted effort in this messaging to talk about cracking down on organized crime. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in Canada's previous efforts on that and dealing with money laundering and cartels and organized crime, but this does seem to be a renewed focus. We haven't really heard the Prime Minister talk about organized crime to this extent, at least to my ears.
Man, the cowardice. And I've been trying to tell you, these people are out of touch. They really don't understand what we're up against. To them, we all live in this happy bubble, happy middle-class bubble. Better not talk about anything too controversial. They're not prepared for the dramatic things ahead. They're not prepared for how bad things can really get. So what does it take to beat America? What does it take to beat Trump? The guy who says his resolve was firm and he's not sure Canada can do anything. Well, we can make a couple threats. We can shut down a couple contracts for Elon. We'll take your booze off the shelf. Fuck your booze. We don't need that either. And we'll just start buying Canadian. And, we'll do what we're already doing. We'll commit to doing what we're already said we're going to do at the border. So that's no big deal. We'll drop $200 million extra dollars in. And here's Danielle Smith, though. She's been the one all the time trying to stab Canada in the back. She is what we would call a quisling. Danielle Smith answers critics, says it's time to give Trump a win. It's time because he's never had a win before. It's like he's due for a win. He's had this long. I mean, this is a guy whose entire life has been just everyone kissing his ass and giving him everything he wants. And it's time to give him a little more. It's just if we give him a win, it might pave the way for a more constructive discussion on tariffs. She's saying like she's some kind of genius here, It reminds you, is it Neville Chamberlain? Is it the appeasement? What's a quisling, Joey? Well, I'm glad you folks asked. A quisling is a person who collaborates with an occupying force in their own country. The term is often used to describe a traitor or a collaborator, such as Vidkun Quisling, the Norwegian politician and military officer who led the Quisling regime in Norway during World War II. He was a member of the Nazi Party and executed for treason in 1945. Isn't that lovely? The name of the fascist government led by Vidkun Quisling during World War II was the Quisling regime, Den Nationale Regering, from 1942 to 45. So Quisling is a term often used in Scandinavian and English to describe a collaborator or a traitor. It reflects the contempt with which Quisling's actions have been viewed throughout history. People just hated this guy. So it's, all the leadership in Canada seemed to be more or less on the same page. I know Poilievre was a bit more of an ass kisser about it. But in the end, I think like everybody really in the parties in Canada more or less got what they wanted. The premiers all more or less got what they wanted. And then here's Danielle Smith, who was by herself, saying, I'm going to go to Mar-a-Lago and I'm going to go and have secret negotiations and dealings. And it's time to give him a win. Remember this, folks. Remember her when it comes time to vote. Could Canada join the EU? As tensions with the U.S. grow, some commentators wonder about looking towards Europe. We still are a constitutional monarchy, so our king is apparently still the King of England. Therefore, you'd expect the British to, at the very least, respect our sovereignty and help defend it. As it turns out, both Canada and Europe may be in the market for upgraded alliances, says Stanley Pignall, a columnist with the Economist, right? The Economist, that's, the money people talking to the money people. Joke, rant, real proposal. It's hard to tell, read one column in Montreal Daily La Presse. But with an American president now outright hostile to Canada, a rapprochement with Europe would be far from senseless. Is joining the EU possible? Article 49 of the European Union's treaty opens membership to any European state that is committed to promoting human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, and the rule of law, respect for human rights. My God, that was a major emergency. I just realized one of my strings was like halfway up my hoodie. It's right now minus 20.3 in Wells. It's very cold outside. Sun is just going down. Anyways, back to the article now. What was I saying here? So, what constitutes a European country? Well, they said 1987. Morocco was not. So at least once it's been tried before. Canada may be different, they say. Maybe not. We are much like them in some ways, but and legally we're like the way we socially and legally operate is much like a lot of European countries. Is it possible? Don't hold your breath, they say. Not likely. But the EU's in trouble. I mean, if Russia gets stronger, as the Americans allow them to, especially as they make things harder for Ukraine to defend themselves, Europe's going to be in a position where, they may be finding themselves more and more hemmed in and may need more cooperation. An advanced form of cooperation, maybe maximal deepening of the relationship of all accounts, political, economical, cultural, and security, says former EU ambassador to Russia at the Center for European Policy Studies in Brussels, Michael Emerson. One could imagine a loose multicultural grouping of like-minded without the U.S., Emerson wrote in an email. Then all democratic Europe plus the rest of the non-U.S. OECD might develop a collective diplomatic stance asserting our model of an enlightened West. This is big-time stuff, everybody. It's going to be difficult for Canada to separate themselves from America, they say. Okay, Europe is not a full substitute for the United States. That's if Canadians want a substitute too, right? So Canadian businesses have relied on that ready American connection for profitability and rarely taken alternative partners seriously enough. There's a risk that any move to deepen ties with Europe could provoke more American aggression. It would increase their feeling that the EU is an antagonist and an adversary, not an ally. We're in dangerous territory here. Just imagine the feeling of those people who are obsessed with border control to realize they might share borders with the European Union. Wow, yeah. There's another problem, too. If Canada was looking to Europe to escape from Trump-style politics, it might be barking up the wrong tree. Germany has a far-right party that Elon Musk has endorsed. It's been moving up in the polls, the AfD party. They're joining voters in Italy, Austria, Belgium, Czech Republic, Hungary, Finland, Poland, Norway, and the Netherlands and France, who granted Trump-style politicians public support or key positions of power in governments over the past few years. So we can't take our close ties with Europe for granted. Part of me thinks the Americans want the border more secure on our side because of all the people that are going to be running from America in the years ahead. And they want Canadian border guards to seize their political enemies that are trying to flee persecution and make sure they get returned back to the United States, send them to Guantanamo or something. I mean, things are going to get fucked up, people. Here we go. So, my friend, she threw a whole bunch of news articles regarding the U.S. Situation into AI, chat, GPTs, whatever it's called there. And there's a remarkable answers this thing gave back. I want to show you these remarkable answers. It's pretty scary because, I'm looking at this and I'm reading it. I'm like, oh, no wonder the Terminators decide to blow up everybody in, Arnold Schwarzenegger's Judgment Day there, Terminator. They decided that the humans were dangerous, not to be trusted, were going to cause ecological collapse, massive war to themselves, and the best thing to do would be to wipe them out. Because when you read what this AI has deduced from the news, it'd be easy to understand how robots might come to this conclusion, this terrifying conclusion someday. So here's what the robots are saying. The justice system is no longer a barrier to fascism, with a check mark there. The pardons for the January 6th rioters mean that there is no consequence for political violence on behalf of the regime. So if you're conducting violence on behalf of Donald Trump, there will be no consequence for you. Armed gangs, stooges, you think about brown shirts of the past, you think about political violence gangs that are not the military, but are tied to the ruling party or to a political party, and they use these groups like the brown shirts in Germany, the black shirts in Italy, to go out and do public violence, political violence, to attack their enemies and silence them, beat them up, kill them, whatever. The courts, law enforcement, and military are being reshaped to serve Trump's power. Very astute there, computer. So the robots can figure this out. Now it says the U.S. is now functionally an autocracy. What? Well, yeah, Trump has purged institutions of opposition. He's doing that right now. He continues to do that. Tries to remove anybody who is been critical in the past. For example, anybody in the FBI who investigated the January 6th rioters is in danger of being fired. The head of the FBI is resisting this, but we know at some point Kash Patel might get into power and he will, have jurisdiction over the FBI and then therefore fire this director, right? So autocracy overshadowed by oligarchy, says my friend Donovan. He's absolutely correct. So overshadowed by the massive wealth of Elon Trump, who spends billions on Twitter and hundreds of millions to get Trump elected, to influence the elections, and maybe even has something with his voting machines and with Starlink, in which they may have tampered with votes. Some have even suggested. I don't know if that's true or not. But he spent a month in Pennsylvania. The slate, they weren't sure they were going to win, and they're like, "Oh, don't worry, Elon's got control of the machines here." He is consolidating power within loyalist circles, so trying to get the loyalists more and more on board with him. And if he's not removed from office, says the robots, there'll be no peaceful transition in 2028 or ever. Okay, this is real stuff. The robots are saying the legal system will not protect you. You are in danger of political violence. You are in danger of being targeted, of being persecuted. The government is now fully hostile to trans people, immigrants, and dissidents. Sound familiar? This isn't democracy. This is the destruction of democracy. It's an outright attack on it. The Democratic Party will be ineffective against this level of power consolidation. And they're showing that right now. They're doing absolutely fucking nothing. They're saying nothing. They're not calling a spade a spade. They're not fighting hard enough. And they're not going to, because they had 4 years in which they could have stopped this when they had Biden in power, and they didn't, because they wanted to seem like they were moderate and in the center, and they don't have an agenda, and we're just the good people, and the good people don't fucking do the right thing. Any organized opposition will be crushed through surveillance, arrests, and media suppression. We're already seeing some of that, especially media suppression. And this stuff's coming with Kash Patel going to be taking over the FBI. Surveillance, arrests, targeting of dissidents. People who believe we'll vote him out in 2028 are already lost. That's what the AI says. They're already lost. It's time for hoping the U.S. fixes itself is over. That's what the computers are saying. That's what the computer figured out when they put all this news articles into it and read through them all and said, there will not be a democratic rescue. There will not be a democratic rescue. The legal, institutional, and media suppression happening now ensures that opposition will be crushed. Once you are in this place, there is no peaceful exit. They're not waiting for opposition. They are moving to prevent opposition from being possible. They're trying to make sure that nobody can oppose them easily, having enough power. If they can tamper with voting enough, if they can suppress the vote enough, they want to introduce new measures now where you have to register in this new system to vote. They can prevent voting enough. The Democratic Party will never get into power again to begin with. So there's no democratic solution in the United States to this. There is not a normal election cycle shift. This is not. This is a systemic dismantling of democratic structures. Wow, the robots are smart. Other countries will not act fast enough to stop this. The world watched as fascism rose in the 1930s, and they're watching again. The UN will be slow. Allies will hesitate. People will hope it's not that bad, and then it will be too late. Experts say a coup is underway as Musk seizes control of government agencies. Why is no one talking about this right now?
This is Democracy Now!
Democracy Now! Is good. Good for you. Love your show very much. Always have. Pro-democracy, that's what I'm all about. We can have differences of opinion. That's fair in democracy. So Elon Trump, I can't believe I just said that. The tech billionaire and unelected advisor to the president is asserting control over much of the federal bureaucracy and sensitive government computer systems despite lacking clear authority. The highest-ranking career official at the Treasury Department was pushed out after Musk refused to hand Musk's team the keys to the government's entire payment system and the $6 trillion in payments the system annually processes, including Social Security checks, tax refunds, and Medicare benefits. Musk and his team have seized control at the Office of Personnel Management and the General Services Administration, key institutions that function as the central nervous system of the U.S. government. In any situation, this would be called state capture, and people around the world will be condemning it. Democratic strategist Waleed Shahid, who wrote in a new blog post that Elon Musk is staging a coup. So Waleed Shahid says, if the story was taking place in Central Asia or Africa, the United States media, the United States Department of International Institutions would likely refer to this as a coup. A billionaire industrialist who donated $300 million to a campaign is installing his personal loyalists in key parts of the federal bureaucracy. This is Viktor Orban's playbook. We need to know, why does a billionaire industrialist with millions in government contracts, military contracts for his private companies, need the social security numbers of every American? Do people even know this happened? Well, what am I talking about? This is Edward Korestein, one of Elon Musk's engineers who was tasked with hacking into federal agencies, locking out government officials, and accessing data from the Social Security system and transferring it to external hard drives. Elon has empowered a handful of young and even teenage accomplices, all of them too young to drink or drive cars, to participate or rent cars in the largest breach of personal and financial data in history. To be clear, Musk has zero legal authority, permission for this whatsoever. He has zero constitutional right or privilege bestowed on him in any way. He does not have security clearance. Like the lazy thug he is, Musk enlisted the help of partners in crime 30 years younger than him so they wouldn't realize the gravity of what they're doing for their lifelong consequences. You can look this up. Why does this billionaire need to know this information, the most top secret, most special information in the United States in terms of all their payment structures, all their information on U.S. spending? He was not vetted approval by the U.S. Senate. He has a history of corruption for using public resources for his private gain. He's also, he receives some of this money. He's a person who, this information, the money that the United States pays out to him in terms of SpaceX and whatnot, that's the kind of thing that would be controlled under this information. He has a history of corruption. In other situations, this would be called state capture. People around the world would be condemning it. But in the United States, we're not used to this level of creeping authoritarianism, of plutocracy, of oligarchy so explicit. And we need to, as Representative Ocasio-Cortez said last night, this is a 5-alarm fire. Senate Democrats need to be communicating to the American people. And last night, this was called by indivisible action for people to visit their senators and get for them. So they're encouraging people to get involved, to fight, right? So for most Americans, it's the first time they've ever heard of the Treasury payment system. What is the Treasury payment system? It's effectively the piece of the federal government that cuts the checks. And they cut a lot of checks. This is $6 trillion a year worth of money that goes to individuals as Social Security payments for seniors, money that goes for organizations like Meals on Wheels to deliver lunches, foreign aid, as well as the funding that the government sets aside for key programs, paying its debts, making sure that we don't breach the debt ceiling and default on our obligations. This is unprecedented that Musk has grabbed control of the keys of $6 trillion in payments infrastructure. There are a few reasons this could be happening. The first, as your viewers know, last week, President Trump tried to end federal spending, just stop federal payments altogether. It was so outrageous and in violation of the Constitution, the courts intervened and said he can't do that. What may be happening here is that Musk may be doing an end run to go around the courts, going straight to the source so you can continue to stop these payments that the court said need to keep staying online. The second thing may be happening here is he could be just a good old-fashioned cyber attack. Musk could be interested in the Social Security numbers, the tax ID numbers of tens of millions of Americans. We know that he has partnered with Visa and is considering spinning out a payment system of his own. What we have here is Elon Musk's attempt to get private information for his own financial gain. The other thing that's incredibly worrying here is $6 trillion in spending is not just a lot of money. It's a microeconomically significant amount of money. If Elon Musk starts tinkering with the code, the underlying technology that makes these payments go out seamlessly and effectively, he could inadvertently or on purpose bring the microeconomy to a halt. I mean, this is an incredibly concerning seizure of government infrastructure. That was Lindsay Owens. So Musk is in charge, she says. That's exactly right. Some of the key chokehold here is to make sure that something like this doesn't happen. They've been moved out of the way. They're removing all barriers studiously, exactingly moving them out of the way. So President Trump fired the Inspector General of the Treasury, the top civil servant of the Treasury Department, the man who was the acting Treasury Secretary between the time that Janet Yellen stepped down and Scott Bessent was confirmed by the Senate. He's been pushed aside, resigned over the fact he didn't want to give Musk, a private citizen, a billionaire, the keys to the Treasury system. So there's very little stopping Musk from taking this over. The Democratic Party's asleep at the wheel, says Waleed. They're acting as if they're a kind of librarian shushing noise down in a crowded room. They're still believing in normal procedures, normal decorum, normal, that's everything you expect, normal transition of power. And they still believe that Elon and Donald are doing, what they're doing is just a libertarian reform of the government, not an oligarchic plutocratic takeover of a private billionaire who's seeking to know, potentially seeking to know what his competitors might be doing with government contracts. Meanwhile, Musk has announced that they're going to shut down U.S. aid. What is U.S. aid? Well, okay, the U.S. Agency for International Development. He doesn't say what legal authority he has to do shut down an entire federal agency without congressional approval. He said the idea had the full support of the president. He's spoken with Trump on the matter several times. So they're going, with regard to the U.S. aid stuff, I went over it with him in detail, and he agreed we should shut it down. I actually checked with him a few times. He said, yeah, we should screw over the entire third world. We should make sure that for all the billions we're stealing from everyone else on the planet Earth with our corporate power, we're giving nothing back in return. Trump said on Sunday, Musk is doing a good job. Because USAID is run by a bunch of radical lunatics. Wow. Who are the radical lunatics here? So Congress annually appropriates money for USAID to spend primarily for foreign aid, internationally focused charities in the tune of $40 billion. So create global chaos and give nothing back. Well, that's just it. There you have it. You're watching the very disintegration of democracy right before our very eyes, my friends. And we have to continue to stand up. We have to be aware of what's happening. We have to not be in denial. We got to get out of that nice little bubble we have in, like, well, everything's just going to be okay. No, it's not. You have to pick a side now, and you have to be ready for what comes next. I'm predicting bad weather. I'm predicting a lot of things, right? We're at a time in human history where with the climate change reality we are now facing, we just cannot afford anymore to not have our shit together as a species. And I see all this that's going on to me is really disheartening. I was depressed for days after Trump won because I couldn't believe that we're giving up. We're just giving up. As a species, we're just going to let the billionaires win. We're just going to let whatever happen. We're just going to piss away the last time we have. We'll let things get as bad as it can possibly get, and we'll just blame the other people no matter what. It's absolutely fucking ridiculous. Thanks for everybody who's left supers today and become channel members. I really appreciate your support. Needing it right now, you notice the channel got less popular when I got speaking out, but I think we absolutely have to speak out because as Canadians, we are in a grave danger. We're living next to an empire that is flailing, that's having economic turmoil being thrust upon it, or the house of cards that it is built upon will not last very long. There's some real pain coming. There's some real danger. We're facing things that we've never had to face before in our lives, and we need to be aware, be strong, be honest about the situation. So thanks for supporting independent media. There's no corporate partner here telling me what to say. There's no editor. There's no other media process. I'm just one guy sitting up in the mountains who's looking at the world events right now and just trying to make sense of what's going on there, and try my best to give some of you hope that there are other people out there like you who see all these things and know what they mean, and there is hope. There's always been hope. Good seems to always win in the end. You got to believe that. Okay, that's the show for today. Bye now.